Let's talk about figurative language. Now, usually in level 9, I'm talking about much deeper figurative language than onomatopoeia, but I couldn't help but give this example and have you explore it because it's a great example of onomatopoeia and used appropriately. But let's talk about onomatopoeia as a refresher. Simply, it is language that goes beyond the literal meaning. And for this one, onomatopoeia, it means that words that actually sound like the sounds they make. So, a simple example is bang. The sound of something exploding with a bang sounds like bang. So it's a word that's spelled to sound like the sound it makes. Splosh, splish, splash, splosh. Plunk, plop. A lot of times students confuse onomatopoeia by throwing it into their writing just here and there, but it's when you use it very precisely that it adds to the story, such as the example you see here. The pounding of the cylinders increased to pocket a pocket a pocket a pocket. It's perfect. It really gives you a sound, a feeling for the cylinders of the engine, and so that's what the figurative language is. Now, before you start on that and read that information, answer those questions, I want to cover the extended activities and the writing connection. I will not be covering these in future lessons because the extended activities are optional. As you probably saw in the teacher handbook, you do not have to do them. The writing connection is expected, but I'm only asking for 5 to 8 sentences. This is not an essay. Please know that. This is not an essay. I simply want 5 to 8 sentences. It's a deeper look into a particular situation in the story or way to connect, but I want you to write more about it. So you're going to provide more content. So let's read it together so that I can instruct you a little bit on it. Walter imagined himself in many exciting scenarios. In each one, he is the center of attention and either saves the day or does something very dramatic. Choose one of the events that Walter imagined in the story. So there's your first command. Put yourself in Walter's place and become the main character of the event you chose. Rewrite the event in first person point of view. Let's talk about book reviews. So, book reviews are pretty much like a book report. I don't know, I don't require my students to do book reports. So, we do literary analysis in high school, but I don't expect them to do book reports, but it's kind of like a more structured book report. It's a literary analysis focusing on 3 things. So, we're studying literature, which would be books, and most of the time, book reviews are written about fiction. It doesn't have to be, but most of the time they are. And basically, we look when we're reading a book review, they focus on content, which is what is the book about? Maybe a synopsis of the plot to help us understand what the book is about. The style, this is the author's way of expressing information. We all write with a certain style, and so famous authors and authors who love literature, they all have a particular style that is evident in their writing. And so a book review will also explore style in addition to what the book is about, the content. And then last, the information presented in a book review is merit. Is this book worth reading? Anytime that question is asked, we have a biased opinion. For example, you are going to be studying The Hobbit. If I was to write a book review on The Hobbit, I would list what the information is about. I would talk about Tolkien's writing style. Then the merit worth reading, I would say, yes, it's worth reading for its literary value. However, I don't care so much to read it because of the style. That's my opinion, so I'm biased about whether I would recommend reading this book or not. The same is true for you. Maybe you love that type of fantasy, the magical, mystical type writing, and in that case, your bias is going to come out in when you would write about merit. So we have to think about that when we're reading a book review to determine, I think this author is biased about whether we should read it or not. So whether we would read the book or not probably would be we should focus more on content and style than any other thing. So read the information that I've presented here in your textbook, and then we'll move on to our first nonfiction literature focus. As you were reading, I had asked you to be thinking about characters and how they are changing and growing, because we're going to be exploring character development throughout the entire novel. Now, character development is focused on the change or the growth of a particular character, and usually the way that we explore that is through an event or some sort of conflict. Now, that event or conflict can be with an outside source, so it could be external conflict. It could also be internal conflict. It really doesn't matter. Sometimes we can see a definite change after an event, but sometimes we can also see a definite change with just conflict in and of itself. So you want to think as you're completing this activity today. I've asked you to read some pages specifically, and then describe Bilbo before he fights the first spider on his own. So you're going to think about his thoughts and actions ahead of time as you read, and then think about what takes place in the event, the conflicts there, how the character is reacting, and then what are the thoughts and actions afterwards? What do you see in relation to comparing the thoughts and actions before to afterward? That's how you're going to be looking at character development. Now, I'm asking you to isolate the character development into one particular event. Normally, we're going to explore character development through the entire novel and focus on it at the end. But I like to insert these little sections of character development along the way, so you have an opportunity to practice it. Okay, I can see how the character was acting this way or thinking this before this event and then afterwards. So that's what the activity we have for you today to complete, and I'd like you to go ahead and get started with that, and then we'll come back for more in the next lesson. First of all, consider the different possible meanings of the words that are used, because words can have different meanings, and based on the different meanings that are given in a dictionary and then the context, you can piece together what is truly trying to be expressed by the author. And then pay attention to the arrangement of the words, because emphasis can be placed on specific words based on where they lie within the line, the particular phrase. And I'll discuss that in just a moment. And then understand how the poem's vocabulary and syntax contribute to the poem's tone, theme, and effect. Because remember, poets are trying to use the most powerful words within a specific structure to communicate something. So they choose their vocabulary very carefully and the arrangement of those words, because it's very crucial. So let's look at if a poet was trying to communicate the thought, I can never love again, by expressing this particular thought in a poem about love, maybe a broken heart. I can never love again. If the author chose to flip the information that's present, the order of the words in the line, the author could say, to love again, I can never. Now, what does that do? It expresses more power on the word never, because it's at the end of the line. To love again, I can never. And never becomes the focal point. So in this case, if I was the poet and I was wanting to communicate never as a powerful, stronger word and the focal point to be, then I would arrange the words in this particular order. How about this one? Love destroyed my heart. In this example, heart is the focal point. I want my reader to think about the heart. But what if I had written, my heart destroyed by love?